An intern steals an idea out of jealousy, but the real test hasn't even started. There's a certain kind of smile that isn't warm, it's calculated. That's the smile Evelyn saw on Clara's face the morning everything began. Evelyn, a bright 24-year-old intern with chestnut brown hair tied neatly in a bun, had been preparing for weeks for her big moment, a project pitch that could change her career. Clara, a fellow intern with striking blonde hair, icy blue eyes, and a reputation for charm that masked ruthless ambition, had always been a friendly face in the office. Or so Evelyn thought. That morning, Clara lingered by the coffee machine, her perfectly pressed cream blazer catching the light. "Big day for you, huh?" she said, her tone dripping with something Evelyn couldn't quite place. Evelyn laughed politely, unaware of the storm about to hit. The company's leadership was known for being cutthroat, good ideas were currency, and trust was rare. Evelyn had her pitch ready, slides perfected, details polished. But when the meeting started, her stomach dropped. Clara stood before the executives, presenting Evelyn's exact idea, word for word, slide for slide. The betrayal was silent but brutal, and as Evelyn sat there, her heart pounding, she didn't yet realize that the theft was only the first move in a much more dangerous game. The conference room was silent except for the soft click of the projector advancing Clara's stolen slides. Every point, every statistic, every clever phrase Evelyn had spent sleepless nights perfecting, Clara delivered them as if they were her own. Evelyn's pulse thudded in her ears. She wanted to speak, to interrupt, to call her out, but a dozen senior managers sat in the room, their sharp eyes locked on Clara, nodding at each brilliant suggestion. Evelyn's mentor, Daniel, sat across from her, frowning slightly. He glanced between the two women but said nothing. His silence was almost worse than the theft. When Clara finished, the room erupted into polite applause. The director leaned forward, smiling. "This is exactly the kind of innovation we need. Outstanding work, Clara." Evelyn could feel her face heating up, her nails digging into her palm under the table. She forced herself to clap along, her expression neutral, even as her mind raced. Clara had taken everything. But why and how did she get access to the pitch? When the meeting ended, Clara brushed past Evelyn without a glance, her phone buzzing in her hand. Evelyn knew one thing: this wasn't over. The ride down from the executive floor was suffocating. Clara stood beside Evelyn, scrolling through her phone with that same smug smile. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension. Evelyn kept her eyes fixed on the digital floor numbers above the doors, willing herself to stay calm. Halfway down, the elevator stopped, and two colleagues stepped in mid-conversation. "Can you believe she pulled that off? Came out of nowhere," one of them whispered. "I heard she was up late all week, refining it." Evelyn's jaw tightened. Lies were already spreading. Clara's version of events was becoming the truth before Evelyn could even open her mouth to defend herself. Clara glanced sideways, her expression unreadable. When they reached the lobby, Clara finally spoke, softly, almost like a warning. "You're talented, Evelyn. But sometimes talent isn't enough. You have to know how to play the game." Then she walked away, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Evelyn stood frozen, her chest heaving. She didn't just lose an idea, she was being erased. That night, Evelyn sat in her small apartment, the city lights flickering through her blinds. She replayed every detail in her mind, searching for the moment Clara could have stolen her work. Evelyn had been careful. Her files were password protected. Her laptop never left her sight. Unless someone had helped Clara. She opened her inbox, scrolling through old emails. There it was, an unreadable blip in her sent folder. A week ago, her draft presentation had been emailed to Clara.s@. She had no memory of sending it. Her stomach dropped. Her account had been accessed without her knowledge. She remembered the IT guy, Miles, stopping by her desk the week before. He'd said her password needed updating. She hadn't thought much of it. Was he involved? The betrayal wasn't just personal. It was calculated. Someone had orchestrated this, and Evelyn was determined to find out who. The next day, Evelyn found Daniel in the break room sipping black coffee. He didn't greet her, just gestured for her to sit. "You need to be careful," he said quietly. "I've seen this before. People get ahead here by stepping over anyone in their way. Confront Clara and you might lose more than a pitch." Evelyn leaned forward. "So I'm supposed to just let her get away with it?" Daniel shook his head. "No, but you need to be smart. She's already building alliances. And if someone in IT helped her, she's not working alone. This goes higher than you think." His words made her skin prickle. Higher than she thought. That meant executives. That meant danger. Evelyn realized this wasn't a simple case of office jealousy, it was a chess game, and she was already 2 moves behind. Later that afternoon, an unexpected email landed in Evelyn's inbox, from Clara. Subject: "Let's talk." Message: "Meet me after work at the Skylight." alone. The skylight was a rooftop bar, an odd choice for a confrontation. Evelyn hesitated, wondering if it was some sort of trap, but her curiosity burned hotter than her fear. If Clara was bold enough to steal from her in plain sight, what would she reveal in private? As the workday dragged on, Evelyn's mind churned. The invitation felt like bait, but bait for what? By 6 p.m. the decision was made. She would go, but she wouldn't go unprepared. She had no idea the conversation on that rooftop would push her into a dangerous spiral she could never have imagined. The city skyline stretched out in glittering waves as Evelyn stepped onto the skylight's rooftop terrace. The warm evening breeze carried the faint hum of distant traffic. Clara was already there, seated at a corner table with 2 martinis waiting. She looked perfectly at ease, her blonde hair catching the golden glow of sunset. "Glad you came," Clara said, motioning to the empty chair. Evelyn sat wary. The air smelled faintly of citrus and something sharper, danger wrapped in charm. "I know you're angry," Clara began, swirling her drink, "but you should thank me. That idea wouldn't have gone anywhere if you pitched it. I made it shine." Evelyn's voice was cold. "You stole it." Clara tilted her head, unbothered. "I used it. There's a difference. You're talented, Evelyn. But raw talent without strategy is wasted. I can teach you how to survive here." Her tone was almost inviting, but beneath the polished words was a threat Evelyn couldn't ignore. Clara wasn't asking for forgiveness, she was offering an alliance, and Evelyn wasn't sure which was more dangerous, rejecting her or accepting. Clara leaned forward, lowering her voice. "There's another pitch coming up, much bigger than the last. I'm talking about the kind of project that puts you in the inner circle. You help me with it, we both rise. No one needs to know what happened before." Evelyn studied her, searching for cracks in the flawless mask. "And if I say no," Clara's smile tightened, just slightly, "then I'll make sure you're forgotten. Completely." The words hit harder than Evelyn expected. Clara wasn't bluffing. She had connections now, executives who saw her as a rising star. One word from her, and Evelyn's internship would be over before it truly began. It wasn't just about survival anymore. If Clara was climbing higher, she was taking every shortcut and leaving wreckage in her wake. Evelyn's gut told her there was more to this big project than Clara was saying, and if she got involved, she'd be stepping into a trap. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. Clara's offer replayed in her mind, twisting into something more sinister with every thought. She opened her laptop and began tracing her steps again. Emails, files, calendar entries. She noticed something strange. The original draft of her stolen pitch had been opened 3 times after she finished it, each time from an IP address outside the company's network. She didn't recognize it. A quick search revealed it was tied to a small tech consultancy, and on their website, a photo of one of the executives smiling arm in arm with Clara. The theft hadn't been spontaneous, it was planned. Clara had external help to polish and repackage the pitch before presenting it. Evelyn's mind raced. If Clara had gone to this much trouble for a small presentation, the big project she mentioned could be far more dangerous than she imagined. The next morning, Evelyn found an anonymous note on her desk. No envelope, no signature. Just 5 words, "She's not who you think." Her first thought was that it came from Daniel, but his face gave nothing away when she passed him in the hallway. Whoever wrote it knew something about Clara, and they wanted Evelyn to dig deeper. She slipped the note into her pocket and kept her expression neutral. Clara was across the room, laughing with 2 senior managers as though she owned the place. Evelyn knew she needed more than suspicion. She needed proof. Something that could take Clara down without destroying herself in the process. But proof in this company came at a price, and she was about to find out how steep that price really was. At lunch, Evelyn's phone buzzed. A blocked number. She answered cautiously. A low male voice spoke quickly, urgently. "If you're smart, you'll stay out of this. Clara's project isn't what you think. People have disappeared over less." The line went dead before she could reply. Evelyn's hands trembled as she set her phone down. This wasn't office politics anymore. This was bigger, darker. When she looked up, Clara was watching her from across the cafeteria, her expression unreadable but her gaze unflinching. It was as if she already knew about the call. Evelyn realized she had a choice: walk away now or keep going and risk everything. And deep down she already knew she wouldn't walk away. That evening, Evelyn sat in a quiet corner of a 24-hour coffee shop, her laptop glowing in the dim light. She began digging deeper into the consultancy tied to Clara. On the surface, it seemed legitimate, a small firm specializing in innovation strategy for corporate clients. But buried in archived press releases and obscure business registries, Evelyn found something chilling. The firm's founders were former employees of a company notorious for covert corporate takeovers, acquiring businesses not through purchase, but through infiltration. They'd leak intellectual property, destabilize internal leadership, and swoop in when the target was vulnerable. Clara wasn't just ambitious, she was connected to a network of corporate saboteurs, and if the big project was part of their playbook, it meant this wasn't about career advancement, it was about dismantling something from the inside. Evelyn realized that by refusing to join Clara, she wasn't just defying a rival, she was standing in the way of a well-oiled operation. That made her a liability. The next morning, Daniel stopped by Evelyn's desk. "Walk with me," he said, his tone unusually sharp. They made their way to the far end of the parking garage, where the hum of traffic muffled their voices. "You're looking into her," he said, more a statement than a question. Evelyn hesitated but nodded. Daniel's eyes scanned the shadows. "If you keep digging, they'll know. And once they know, it's too late to turn back. I've seen this before, bright, talented people thinking they can outsmart the system. Most end up gone. The lucky ones just lose their careers." Evelyn's chest tightened. "So what do I do? Let her win," Daniel sighed. "You survive. That's the only win that matters here." But as he walked away, Evelyn could see something in his posture, hesitation, like he knew more than he was telling. Later that day, as Evelyn sat in the cafeteria picking at her lunch, a junior analyst named Marissa slid into the seat across from her. She was barely 22, with shy eyes and a voice that rarely rose above a whisper. "I know what Clara's doing," Marissa said quietly. "I was in the room when she made the deal." Evelyn's fork froze midair. "What deal?" Marissa leaned closer. "The consultancy isn't just helping her with pitches, they're paying her. In exchange, she feeds them confidential data from our R&D department. She's already leaked 3 prototypes. This big project is their biggest grab yet." The words made Evelyn's skin crawl. This was no longer just professional betrayal, it was corporate espionage. And now she had confirmation from someone on the inside. But Marissa's hands shook as she spoke, and her warning was clear. "If they think you know, you'll be next." That evening, another email arrived from Clara. Subject: your decision. Message: if you're in, meet me tomorrow night. If you're out, I'll make sure you're gone by Monday. There was no pretense now, the choice was laid bare. Evelyn could play along and possibly find an opening to expose her, or she could refuse and watch her career disintegrate overnight. She closed her laptop and sat in the dark, the city noise outside a distant hum. The clock was ticking. She had less than 24 hours to decide which path to take. Evelyn decided to meet her. But she wasn't going alone, not really. She spent the night contacting a discreet source in the media, a journalist known for uncovering corporate corruption. They agreed to monitor her location and record the meeting if anything went wrong. The next evening, she walked into the same rooftop bar where this all began. Clara was there, but this time she wasn't alone. 2 men in tailored suits flanked her, both strangers, but their watchful eyes said everything. "Glad you came," Clara said, smiling as though this were a friendly chat. "Let's talk about the future." Evelyn sat down, her heart pounding. She knew she was sitting in the middle of the trap. The question now wasn't if she could get out, but whether she could take Clara down before the jaws snapped shut. Clara's smile faded into something sharper as she leaned forward. "The project isn't just a pitch, it's a transfer. In 3 weeks, this company will sign over a key division to one of our partners. I need someone inside to access encrypted files. That someone is you." Evelyn's stomach clenched. This wasn't a test of creativity, it was a test of loyalty to Clara's shadow network. If she agreed, she'd be committing a crime. If she refused, she'd be eliminated, professionally or worse. The 2 men in suits watched her with silent intensity. One tapped his phone, the other sipped his drink, but both radiated quiet menace. Clara's voice softened, almost coaxing. "You're smart enough to know that saying no isn't really an option. This is your chance to prove you belong." Evelyn forced her expression to remain calm, hiding the fact that her pulse was racing. She was in deeper than she'd imagined, but she also knew something Clara didn't. She was already laying the groundwork to expose them. Evelyn gave Clara a slow nod. "If I'm in, I need details." It was the answer Clara wanted, and her smile returned instantly. She outlined the plan in hushed tones, how Evelyn would be given clearance to a restricted server, how the data would be packaged and handed off, and how payment would be arranged afterward. But as Clara spoke, Evelyn memorized every word, every date, every name. She wasn't agreeing to help, she was gathering evidence. The journalist she'd contacted was already waiting nearby, recording audio through a concealed microphone in Evelyn's handbag. Clara finished her drink and stood. "I knew you'd make the right choice. The two men followed her out, leaving Evelyn alone with the city lights. Her hands trembled as she gripped her bag. The next 72 hours would decide everything, whether Clara went down in flames or Evelyn did. The following days were a blur. Evelyn played her part flawlessly, asking questions, accepting access codes, and pretending to prepare for the transfer. At night, she passed every scrap of information to the journalist, who assured her the story was coming together. But on the third day, her phone rang again. It was the same blocked number as before. "You have 1 day left," the male voice said. "After tomorrow, no one will be able to help you. Not even your friend in the press." Evelyn's blood ran cold. The journalist's involvement had been discovered. That meant Clara's people were watching her more closely than ever. She had to move now, or the trap would snap shut for good. She arranged one final meeting with the journalist, knowing it could be her last. It happened faster than Evelyn could process. The night before the planned data transfer, Clara arrived at the office early, dressed in her usual cream blazer, her smile bright as ever. Evelyn followed her into the conference room, pretending to finalize documents. At 10 a.m., the journalist's exposé went live. Screens across the building lit up with headlines. "Corporate espionage ring infiltrates major firm. Evidence points to rising star." The story was airtight: emails, recordings, photographs. Clara's face was everywhere. The room erupted in chaos. Executives shouted, security stormed in, and Clara's expression finally cracked. She turned to Evelyn, realization dawning in her eyes. "You," she whispered just before she was escorted out. Evelyn stood quietly, heart pounding, as the storm raged around her. She had survived the test, but at a cost. She knew the shadow network wasn't gone, only wounded, and they would remember her. The game wasn't over. By the afternoon, Clara's name was on every news channel. Her LinkedIn profile had vanished, and so had she. The company sent out a formal statement calling her a rogue actor, distancing themselves from the scandal. Internally, however, whispers told another story. Clara wasn't in police custody. She had vanished before authorities could reach her. Evelyn returned to her desk to find Daniel waiting. "You did it," he said quietly. But his expression wasn't celebratory. It was heavy, guarded. "You also made yourself a target. She's not the type to disappear quietly." The words echoed in Evelyn's mind. She wanted to believe it was over, but deep down, she knew Daniel was right. Clara hadn't lost, not entirely. She'd just gone underground. That night, Evelyn received a secure email from the journalist. Attached were files that hadn't been published, records linking the consultancy to multiple corporate takedowns over the last decade. One name appeared over and over again in the shadows. Asterion Group. Evelyn had never heard of them, but their influence was terrifying. They weren't just after one company, they were destabilizing industries. And Clara, with her sharp mind and ruthless ambition, had been one of their most promising assets. The journalist's message was blunt. "She'll come for you eventually. When she does, you'll need to be ready." 3 weeks passed without incident. Evelyn began to relax, convincing herself that Clara had moved on to another target. Then, late one Friday evening, she found an envelope on her apartment doorstep. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Clara, somewhere in a crowded street, smiling directly at the camera, on the back a handwritten note. "Miss me?" Evelyn's fingers went cold. This wasn't over. Clara wanted her to know she was still out there, still watching. Evelyn made her choice. She wasn't going to hide. She began compiling her own file on Asterion Group, collecting names, transactions, obscure mentions in business registries. Daniel, after much persuasion, agreed to help her. He revealed he'd crossed paths with them years ago and had barely escaped with his career intact. "This isn't just about Clara anymore," he told her one night over coffee. "This is about dismantling something that thinks it's untouchable." For Evelyn, the stolen pitch was no longer the story. It was the spark. She had been pulled into a war she never asked for, but she wasn't going to be a passive player anymore. Months later, Evelyn walked into a networking event at a high-rise hotel. She wore a sleek black dress and carried nothing but her phone and a steel determination. Among the polished crowd of executives and consultants, she spotted a familiar face in the far corner, Clara. Their eyes locked. No words were exchanged, but the faint smile that passed between them said everything. They were no longer intern and rival. They were adversaries in a much bigger game, one that would stretch across years, across companies, across borders. Evelyn knew she had won the first round, but Clara was already setting up the second, and this time there would be no rules. The game had only just begun. 2 days after the silent encounter at the networking event, Evelyn received an invitation by courier. Heavy cream card stock, embossed lettering. It was an exclusive gala hosted by one of the largest conglomerates in the country. The sender's name was not printed anywhere, but inside was a single note, handwritten in elegant cursive. "Your next move, darling. Don't disappoint me." There was no signature, but Evelyn didn't need one. Clara had made her next move. Daniel advised her not to go. "It's bait," he warned. "Whatever she's planning, it's meant to corner you in public." But Evelyn saw it differently. If Clara wanted her there, it meant Clara thought she had the upper hand, which meant Evelyn had a chance to flip the game. The night of the gala, the grand ballroom was a sea of crystal chandeliers, glittering gowns, and murmured conversations. Evelyn entered with measured confidence, dressed in a deep emerald silk gown that shimmered with each step. She spotted Clara within minutes, draped in silver, the picture of poise, laughing with a group of high-ranking executives. Their eyes met across the room. Clara raised her glass in a mock toast. Evelyn kept moving, weaving through the crowd, observing. She noticed a cluster of unfamiliar men lingering by the bar, watching Clara closely. They weren't guests, they were muscle, and if they weren't here for Clara, they were here for her. Clara approached, the crowd parting as though she were royalty. "Enjoying the evening?" she asked with that infuriating, knowing smile. Evelyn matched her tone. "Just waiting to see what you're really after." Clara's eyes glittered. "It's simple. There's a merger being finalized tonight. I need one file from the secure suite upstairs. You still have access." Evelyn understood instantly. Clara wasn't here to destroy Evelyn. She was using her as a pawn again. The file was no doubt part of a larger Asterian group operation. And Evelyn knew if she refused, she might not leave the building. Instead of saying no, Evelyn smiled sweetly. "Fine, let's make history." She took the elevator to the secure suite, aware of one of Clara's men shadowing her. But Evelyn had prepared for this. Tucked inside her clutch was a tiny device, a signal transmitter given to her by the journalist months ago. The moment she entered the secure room, she activated it. Within seconds, the journalist and a small team of investigators, hidden nearby, had full access to the room's internal surveillance feed. She opened the requested file, downloaded it, and slipped it into the man's waiting hand. But she also made sure every second of the exchange was recorded from multiple angles. Minutes later, Evelyn returned to the ballroom. Clara was waiting, still radiant, still confident. But her smile faltered when Evelyn leaned in and whispered, "By morning, this building will be swarming with federal agents. I hope that silver dress photographs well for the mugshot." The color drained from Clara's face for the briefest second before the mask returned. "You think you've won," she murmured. "You haven't even seen the whole board." Security entered the ballroom moments later, flanking Clara. The crowd gasped as she was escorted out, still smiling faintly as if she knew something Evelyn didn't. Evelyn stood in the glittering chaos, heart pounding. The journalist had the proof. The feds would take it from here. But Clara's last words lingered like a shadow. A week later, Evelyn sat in her apartment, news channels buzzing with updates on Clara's arrest and the dismantling of several Asterian group fronts. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the gnawing certainty that this wasn't truly over. Then her phone vibrated. A new message, no name, no number, just a video. It was Clara, sitting in an unknown location, her hands free, her expression calm. "You've done well," she said softly. "But you're not the only one who knows how to play the long game. We'll meet again." The video cut to black. Evelyn stared at the screen, a slow, cold smile forming on her lips. If Clara wanted another round, she'd be ready. The game wasn't over, it never would be. Evelyn didn't wait for the authorities to decide Clara's fate. She knew Asterian group had influence, enough to make high-profile cases quietly disappear. So she took matters into her own hands. With the journalist's help, she arranged for Clara to be transferred, not to a local holding facility, but to a remote jurisdiction overseas with no easy extradition. There, Asterian's reach would be far weaker. The plan worked. Within 48 hours, Clara was gone from the city entirely. No late-night escapes, no mysterious disappearances. Evelyn had taken her off the board for good. The media storm didn't fade quietly. The files Evelyn had helped recover triggered a cascade of investigations. Executives resigned. Bank accounts were frozen. The consultancy that had propped up Clara collapsed under federal scrutiny. The Asterian group, once untouchable, fractured into splinter factions. Some tried to operate in the shadows, but without their internal network intact, they became easy targets for law enforcement. For the first time since the stolen pitch, Evelyn could breathe without looking over her shoulder. Months later, a postcard arrived at Evelyn's desk. A single sentence was written on the back: "Even queens can return to the board." The postmark was foreign. Evelyn held it for a long moment before tucking it into a drawer. She didn't feel fear anymore, only resolve. Clara might return one day, but Evelyn had learned too much, gained too much ground to be caught off guard again. Evelyn stayed with the company for another year, rising quickly through the ranks. When she finally left, it wasn't out of fear, but choice. She joined an independent investigative group, using her skills to uncover corporate crimes before they could destroy lives. Every now and then, she'd think back to that morning in the conference room when Clara stole her pitch. The anger was gone now. What remained was the knowledge that it had been the moment that forced her to become something more than just another ambitious intern. It had turned her into a strategist, a survivor, and someone Clara would never underestimate again. On a quiet evening, months after Clara's postcard, Evelyn sat in her apartment watching the city skyline. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. Former corporate infiltrator sentenced in absentia for international data theft. There was no photo, but Evelyn knew it was her. Clara was no longer a threat, not because she was gone, but because Evelyn had outgrown her shadow. The game was over, and Evelyn had won.